So, a lot of times you hear about people talking about America being the best because of its form of government. A lot of times you'll hear about elections. You hear people talking about the president. But you might not understand what makes America so great, what makes our government system different from others. So, first thing we have to do is we have to start off with what makes a government. What is a government? And it's an organization, an institution, and individuals that exercise political authority on behalf of a group of people. So, in a way, you could say that your teachers could be the government here at the school because we are acting on behalf of the students. Everybody cannot have a say. Everybody cannot exercise their opinion and get their way. A lot of times you need people who are in charge to make decisions. For example, this is our governor here in Indiana. His name is Mike Pence. He is essentially the president of the state of Indiana. He makes very, very large decisions that impact Indiana specifically. So that is one example of government. You are a citizen of the United States. You are a legal member of a country. Sometimes you will hear people referred to as illegal immigrants, and that is because they are not legal members of a country, yet they live in that country. So here in the United States, or anywhere in the world, to be a citizen, you have to be a legal member of that country. Essentially, types of government fall under two basic types. A limited government, in which this is a government where even the people who make the laws have to obey them, or an unlimited government where the people who are in charge do not obey the laws. There are no laws or rules that the ruler must obey. So typically, when you look at an autocracy or an autocracy, either way, tomato, tomato, that form of government does not always work. It's been shown that unless you're talking about a monarchy where the people are typically very much in love with the person, like for example in Saudi Arabia, they love their king. They love King Abdullah, and but however, the typical autocracy or autocracy that we see is a dictatorship, and that hasn't always been good. So what's a constitution? We have a constitution here in the United States. It is a written plan of government. Constitutions are popular around the world with democracies and non-autocratic governments. So here you see the two types of government. No government and the types of government. You have an autocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and others. So what are the three main types of government? Autocracy, oligarchy, democracy. So we're going to talk about each of these types of government today. The first one is anarchy. Now, anarchy is typically not the direction you want to go. You might have seen this symbol before that stands for a country that does not want any type of government. It is the absence of government, a state of lawlessness due to the absence or inefficiency of the supreme power, political disorder. Essentially, that's really bad because when you have no government in place, there's no one there to protect the weak, and you are at the mercy of people with guns, Typically, anarchy, not a way to go. So if you ever hear a teacher walk in and say, this room is like total anarchy, it's because there's a state of lawlessness. All right, an autocracy, rule by one. So these are the forms of autocracy. The first form is a dictatorship. A dictatorship is a form of government in which the government is ruled by one individual. This is typically not a good thing. The pros would be that you don't have a lot of lawbreakers because everybody's afraid of the guy in charge. The cons are you have absolutely no freedom. You have absolutely no right to do anything. The dictator does not have to bow down to anyone, and giving one person that amount of power is never good. So these are some examples of dictators that we've seen throughout history. Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Kim Jong-il. You might have heard of those three guys. They are typically the ones we think of when we talk about dictators. Then you have in autocracy, under the umbrella of autocracy, a monarchy. A monarchy is a king or queen. So a king or queen are usually born into power, they have complete control of the government, and they have divine right. A lot of times people feel like God himself has personally given this family power. And they have rule because their father had rule. So this is only seen in a couple of places around the world now. Saudi Arabia is probably the most popular example. And then you have a theocracy. This is a form of government in which a state is understood as governed by immediate divine guidance, especially a state ruled by clergy. So what does that mean? That means a government is ruled by a religious authority. The most popular form of this government is Vatican City in Italy, which is actually its own separate government, and that government is ruled by the Pope. Israel and Iran are also popular examples of theocracies. All right, then we move on to a totally separate branch of government, and that is oligarchy. In oligarchy, you are ruled by a few. So the pros of an oligarchy is that decisions can be made relatively quickly. In theory, they are the most educated members of society. The bad things is that the needs of the people may be neglected because civil rights are trampled on. Civil rights are like your right to speak your mind, your right to free speech, your right to freedom of religion, your right to be an individual. Those are civil rights. All right, now the form of government that the United States has, and this is democracy. So we have democracy, oligarchy, and autocracy. This is rule of the people. Democracy, rule of the people. Now there's two types of democracy. There is a direct democracy in which all voters in a community meet in one place to make laws and decide what actions need to take place. So in a direct democracy, you would actually be making decisions, okay? Every citizen has equal power in a direct democracy. This is not the form of democracy that the United States government uses. However, there are examples of direct democracies inside of the United States. For example, a town hall meeting. In a town hall meeting, every citizen has a right to speak their mind, be heard, and make decisions. This only works when a small number of people are involved, because coming to a decision with everyone having the right to speak is not always a very time-efficient way to go. Now we have a representative democracy. People elect representatives to carry out the work of the government. This is absolutely the type of government that the United States has. It's also been shown that a republic is the most practical. It's also been seen that this is the best way, the best form of government to have, because it is the most fair. You do not have one person making all decisions. People have a say, yet there's not chaos with everyone trying to get their opinion to be heard in the White House, in the Indiana state government, in your local town government, your city government. So most cities are run this way, and we'll talk about this more later, but essentially in the United States, you have the same form of government at the local, state, and federal. The last form of government that we're going to talk about is a constitutional monarchy. There's two places in the world that have the most famous constitutional monarchy, and that is Japan and Great Britain. This is a form of monarchy in which the king or queen is limited by a constitution. So essentially the king and queen in England are what we call figureheads. They really have very, very little political power, but at the same time it's tradition to have a king or queen. So they have king or queens that go and direct will go to different countries and represent the king or the country in a ceremonial kind of way. So the answer to number 16, what is the country with the best example of a constitutional monarchy, would be Great Britain or England. Okay, kids, that was our lecture on different forms of government.